Gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Plum.
Speaker, I rise for point of personal privilege.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I would suggest to you that our going home for a couple of days or a couple of weeks could be refreshing. One thing, we're not going to have to eat lunch or listen to the speeches. But on the other hand, we'll be able to have, as the gentleman from Fairfax has indicated, an opportunity to have a conversation with our constituents. And I think that is incredibly appropriate, very necessary. And Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I most often have those conversations with my constituents at my place of worship, in my church. And I've been thinking about what I'm going to be saying this Sunday when my good friends, and there are about a dozen of them who always want to know, how are things going? What am I going to say to them? Well, I'm in part going to say to them, you know, we really did some good work. Those SOLs that people have been so concerned about, we're going to reform those SOLs. That's a good step forward. The ethics, people are concerned about ethics reform. We're making steps forward there. We're doing some concrete things. But they're likely to say, well, what about the budget? What about the health care? And I'm going to have to say to them, well, we're going to go back and work on that. Why didn't you get it done while you were there? Well, it seems that some people want to pass a budget overlooking a couple $2 billion worth of resources that are available to our Commonwealth for our use with our citizens who are most in need. They somehow insist that you can pass a budget which would be a fiction to suggest these are the resources that we have for Virginia. The notion about separating Medicaid from the budget is one that I have been baffled by, and I have called my friends who are in planning and budget and so on and asking them to give me some common sense explanation as to why you would do that. And the answer would be that you would do that when you've decided already that you're not going to expand Medicaid. Because if in fact you plan to expand Medicaid, you'd put it in the budget. So let's not develop this fiction somehow that by how we're proceeding is something other than to follow the signals of those people. And Mr. Speaker, I noticed recently from the Commonwealth, Secretary of the Commonwealth's office, you know, you can look at how many people have signed up from various organizations to lobby us here in Richmond. There are 14 of them now from the Americans for Prosperity. I didn't understand that phrase about clean budget until I looked at the Americans for Prosperity social website. Clean budget is what they call it. Clean budget means leaving out Obamacare, because Obamacare is what they spend most of their time talking about. When I say to my people back home, well, we didn't pass a budget because, oh, you know, when they did the Affordable Care Act, the computer didn't work quite well as it should. Oh, when they tried to sign up, the program didn't work. A program, I might say, written by a Virginia company. But, oh, the program didn't work, so we can't expand Medicaid because Obamacare program didn't work well. Oh, we can't expand Medicaid because, you know, with the Affordable Care Act, they've made some adjustments that people wanted to make. Are these reasons for not going forward when the people in my church are going to be saying to me, but Ken, you know and I know how much we spend working with our free clinic because we've got people in our community who could qualify for Medicaid. You know how much we spend on our social justice missions because there are people in our community who need our help. And why, Ken, can you explain to me, since I in my business am now paying additional taxes and fees to go to Washington, are you not in the House of Delegates voting to accept that money back for Virginia's citizens? How am I supposed to answer that question? What is the answer to that question? Why would we allow Virginians to be taxed? We used to talk about taxation without representation. We're talking now with taxation without benefit. You get to send your money to Washington, but because the computer up there doesn't work right, or because it's called Obamacare, or because the president is not as popular as we'd like him to be, we're not going to take that money back. Well, you can talk about measuring twice and cutting once. I talk about cutting off my nose to spite my face, because I think that's part of what we're talking about here. And how would it be when my constituents say to me, I know of hospitals in this state that are hurting because they don't have the resources to serve the indigent. And oh, by the way, Ken, why are you proposing to appropriate general fund monies to help serve the indigent when Virginia taxpayers are paying money to meet that need through Medicaid expansion? So why aren't you expanding Medicaid? Mr. Speaker, when I think about going back home, there are a number of unanswered questions. I think there's questions that we're all going to get. It's nice to take a look at a public opinion poll and say, well, it looks like Obamacare is kind of declining in the polls, so let's blame it all on Obamacare. But ultimately, it's not about Obamacare. It's about Virginia's citizens, 1 million of whom are uninsured, about 250,000 of whom could be helped, with money that is already being raised from our citizens. All we have to do is to get ourselves together and define how we're going to use that money. I think when we get home, people are going to scratch their head puzzlement about what it is we've been doing here. Yeah, we've done some good work, but Mr. Speaker, the biggest task we had before us, we weren't up to this session. I look forward to coming back in a special session when we can focus on the needs of the people of Virginia and respond to those needs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.